Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about my birth story. So my birth story started at 4 p.m, around 4 p.m. on the 25th of July 2019. So this was my first baby. I was a week overdue, and at this point I had had 2 stretch and sweeps already. The first one was a week prior on my due date, and the second one was a week later. So the first one, I left the hospital in cramps and kind of thought I was going into labour, but they said the cramps were normal. So I went home and went to bed and nothing happened. So the following week, I was actually booked in to get induced on the Monday, and this was the Friday that I had the second stretch and sweep. I was in the shops a few days earlier, and I swear my water broke. I had a gush of water, and my pants were wet, so I really thought that my water had broken. So we rushed to the hospital. I was really calm. I got put onto a machine which was saying that I was having contractions, but I wasn't feeling any pain. So they called the doctor in to check, and she said I may have had a slow leak, but they didn't do anything about it. She told me to go home. If more came out, then to come back. But she said basically the rule of thumb was if you wet through a pad, then they will induce you. So anyway, they booked to induce me on the Monday. So it was Friday, and got my second stretch and sweep prior to the Monday because I was just over it. It was a 40-week checkup, and I asked if they could just try another stretch and sweep. So they did that, no harm done. Anyway, I got the same cramps, so I went home because they said it was probably just going to go away again. Anyway, all the way home I started getting stronger, kind of cramping. By the time I got home, it was getting a bit uncomfortable, so I called the hospital, and they told me that it was my first baby. It would be like 30 hours or whatever till I gave birth, so not to worry, just to take a shower, just relax. So I tried to lay there, I tried to relax, I had a shower, it was getting worse and worse. So I called back again, and they said, look, you can come in if you want. This is your first baby, though. If you're not in labour, you'll get sent home. Anyway, so I came in. It was an hour away, the hospital. So each way, no matter what hospital I go to, they're an hour away from me. There is one 20 minutes away, but they don't deliver babies. It's just like emergency kind of stuff. So anyway, started driving to the hospital, and then I started feeling worried, like, what if I'm not in labour? We're going to drive an hour just to come home, like, really don't want to do that. So we're getting on the freeway, and my husband says, so are you sure you want to go in? And this was kind of a turning point, because I was like, I don't know if I'm in labour or not. But we went in anyway in the end, and luckily we did, because by the time we got to the car park, I was like kind of already ready to push. So I was in extreme pain at this stage, and the hospital told me in my appointments leading up to this that when you call the hospital when you're in labour, they'll meet you down at the car park with a wheelchair. Anyway, no one comes down, no one meets us. So my husband runs to the emergency section, gets a wheelchair, comes back and gets me, wheels me into the labour suite. So we have to go up an elevator and everything. I'm in so much pain. We get to the counter, and the guy tells us to wait in the waiting room. So we're in the waiting room, and I'm literally screaming at this point because I'm in so much pain. No one comes to check on me. It's been about 20 minutes. Finally, a nurse hears me screaming and comes and checks me. She says, what's wrong? I said, I'm pretty sure I'm in labour. She checks my belly, and sure enough, she says that I'm in labour. So she puts me in a room, and I tell her I want an epidural. So she puts me in this room, tells me to relax. So I'm in this room. So I'm just sitting in there kind of in labour, in pain. She checks me, and she says, I think she said I was like 5 centimetres dilated at that point or something. I tell her I want an epidural. And then she gets really annoyed and says, oh, if I knew you wanted an epidural, I would have put you in a different room. We can't do them in this room. So at that point I'm like, what? Because I already told her that I wanted one. But no one at the hospital listened to me already, so it should have been kind of a warning sign. So anyway, she goes off to look for one. About 2 hours later, I'm in absolute agony. Me and my husband are just in the room by ourselves. No one's there. Another person hears me absolutely screaming my lungs out, swearing, screaming. So she comes in to check on me, and she checks me and she says, okay, come with me to the birthing suite. Anyway, at this point, I tried to go in the shower already and I was in a lot of pain. I was in too much pain, having too strong contractions to put my clothes back on. So she puts a towel around me. I walk naked basically. Yeah, actually naked. And I was in too much pain to hold the towel on. So I was just walking down the hallway with my towel wide open, heading to the birthing suite. So at this point there's guests and whatever walking through, other people that are with people that are in labour, all that sort of thing. I get to the room and this original nurse that found me comes up to me and goes, we've got good news. And my instant reaction was, you've got my epidural. And she says, no, you're about to have your baby. And to me, this is the most terrifying thing I can imagine, because my whole life I've just envisioned getting an epidural. I talked about it with the hospital that I wanted one. We were all kind of like, me and my husband just didn't know what to do. I'm crying at this point because I'm terrified. So we get into the room and basically I get up on the bed and I start to push. They tell me to tell them when I'm going to push, and basically so I start at my back, start pushing. I'm screaming, and from what I can remember now, the only pain I remember feeling is when I was in that room unattended in labour and when I'm pushing the baby's head out. The rest of the time I just remember being motivated to push him out, like really focusing on pushing. Anyway, so each push kind of, what I do remember is that it kind of felt good, like in a way that it was like I was progressing. I was moving forward, closer to getting my baby out, and in all honesty it feels like you're doing a giant poo. Exactly what pushing a baby feels like until you get to the head. So I'm pushing away and they try and get me onto my all fours. I tried that and it's not working for me. I was very uncomfortable, so I told them I want to go back on my back. So I did give birth on my back. 4 hours labour to birth. I tore really bad. I had 2nd degree tearing, maybe even 3rd degree I had about. They said I had 4 stitches, but then afterwards when I went home and I had a midwife come to my house for the next few days, she checked me and said she could see at least 8, so I don't know what was going on there. And the only painkillers I really got, I got some gas before I was pushing, and then they told me I couldn't have it anymore. And it was on a very, very low setting, I found. Out later, and also had gas when they were doing the stitches, and they also put a numbing needle, but I was in extreme amounts of pain at that point when they were doing the stitches, and they didn't know why. Later found out that it was actually the nurse who was giving me the gas turned onto the lower setting. I don't know why. The lady that was stitching me up got up her big time for this, because it's just not okay. It was at the point where I was in so much pain that they were saying they were going to have to put me under, and it was going to be a whole big thing to do my stitches because I was in so much pain. As soon as I found out that the gas was turned right down, they turned it up. I made a complaint after I gave birth because of that, because it was just horrific. Anyway, moving on to the next part. So they've delivered my baby, he's on my stomach. I have the same nurse who was telling me, that same nurse that put the gas right down, telling me that I needed to feed my baby right now. I said to her, I've never breastfed before, this is my first baby, I don't know how, I haven't done any classes. Basically she just kept repeating, you need to feed your baby, you need to feed your baby, we can't show you how to feed your baby. So I'm crying again because I don't know how to feed my baby, and apparently he's starving. And then another nurse comes in and she says to me, I'll take you back to your room and I'll teach you how. So she showed me how. Breastfeeding was going great, he was feeding well, he slept through the night that night. That hasn't happened since, but yeah, that's for another video. So yeah, he fed fine, sleeping through the night. Next morning I fed him again, he was good. And then a lactation consultant comes in and basically she tells me I'm doing it all wrong, starts manoeuvring his head around, being really rough. Long story short, it was very painful, and then he stopped latching properly at all. So after that, I was so upset about my treatment thus far in the hospital altogether, so I told them that I wanted to leave. So after much arguing with the lactation consultant, we checked out. Back at home, after that I just could not, he would not latch properly. He had a really bad positioning, and it was extremely painful. My nipples were bleeding, and it was just horrible. So my husband went out and got formula to give me a little break. So he was having that, and in the meantime I was pumping. So I was pumping, and that was painful as well, but it wasn't as painful as breastfeeding. So then when I was pumping, I've noticed a lot of blood coming out. So obviously I freaked out, and I called the hospital, a different hospital this time, because I didn't want anything to do with the one I gave birth in. And they basically told me that it could be a clogged duct, which would explain why I was having so much pain, or it could be cracked nipples, and to kind of persevere if I wanted to, or if to not, just put baby back on formula. So I kept baby on formula for maybe like a day or two. He was drinking that fine. Then I went back to breastfeeding. He would not take it. It was very stressful for both of us, and we ended up just continuing with formula. So in the end, I wrote a complaint letter to my hospital, because even though all the things I told you, there were so many more things that went down. And I will read you this email, because I feel like I put it best into words in this email. Okay. So, I wrote the names of the midwives in charge, second in charge, who the baby's dad was, who stitched me up, and all those details. Anyway, so I said, starting at 12 p.m, I had this is on Friday around lunchtime, I had a stretch and sweep, and in an effort to bring on labour, as I was a week overdue and was booked in for induction the following Monday, it was the 25th of July at the time. After experiencing cramping, I was sent home, as this is a normal symptom after having a stretch and sweep. I had experienced the same cramping the week before after my stretch and sweep, and did not go into labour, so I did not think anything of it. On the way home from the hospital, in brackets I live an hour away, I started experiencing stronger contractions, which continued after I got home. Deciding to time the cramping episodes, I was getting a reading of 3 to 4 minute apart contractions. So this is another thing that I told the hospital on the phone. They didn't believe me. They said that's impossible for them to be that close together, because that means you're in active labour. So I was. Anyway, I called the hospital to advise them of this, and I was told to stay at home, as this was more than likely just post-stretch and sweep pains. After the pains got closer and closer together, increasingly more painful, I called again, to which I was told to take a warm shower and sit tight, as this was my first baby, and if this was labour, it would be a long time before anything happened. After about 20 minutes, I decided it was too much to handle and called again. Brushing off my pain, I was told to have a hot shower and only come in if I really couldn't handle it, to get checked, but I would more than likely be sent home. My contractions continued to get unbearable, and on the way home from the hospital, my contractions continued to get unbearable on the way to the hospital, and I was not met by anyone with a wheelchair like I was told I would be on the hospital tour. When I got to the hospital, my husband had to run and get me one, as I could not walk from being in too much pain. When I arrived at the birth suite, I was put in the waiting room despite me clearly being in immense pain and being very vocal about it. I was in there for about 20 minutes and to half an hour before a nurse came in and asked if I was okay, as I was being very loud at this point. I told her I believed I was having contractions, and she felt my stomach and confirmed that yes, I was in active labour. and that she would take me to a room to labour in. Once we reached the room, I asked straight away when I could have the epidural, as I was in a lot of pain already, and had specified that I wanted an epidural at every single appointment in capitals. Leading up to this point, obviously put out, she sighed and said she would have to find me another room, as I could not labour in this room and have an epidural. She tried to insist that I try alternative methods such as a warm shower and movements, breathings, etc. I kept insisting that I needed an epidural, to which she told me to wait and she would book it in. After we agreed on this, she said that I said that I had the urge to go to the toilet. To this she said she would check me, as I may have the urge to push. She checked me and I was 5 centimetres dilated. I had been 1 to 2 centimetres at my appointment that morning. My husband said, asked if I could get the epidural, and her response was not to worry, as there was plenty of time. I asked for gas in the meantime, and she said she would get me some, and never came back. After she had been gone for what seemed like hours, I got in the shower, not being able to cope with the pain anymore, with absolutely no aid. It became unbearable, and the shower was not easing my pain. I explicitly stated to her, as did my husband, that I wanted pain relief, as my jaw dislocates under pressure and it is agonising. She knew about this, and the hospital was aware as well, and it was on my records. It got to the point where I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and another nurse came in and found me due to the noise. She began to take me from the shower to a birthing room, naked, as I was in too much pain to put clothes on, covered in a blanket. The previous nurse ran over at this point, saying that I was her patient. I asked where the epidural was, and she said she had booked it, but there were a lot of people ahead of me. I asked for alternative pain medication, and she said she could hook me up to an IV to have morphine. After putting in the drip, I was examined and told that she had good news. When I asked if it was getting an epidural, she said, "No, you're about to have your baby." Horrified as I had not been given any sort of pain relief, my anxiety skyrocketed. I was led to the delivery bed, where I was given gas, only to be taken off when it was time to push. I instantly noticed the volume of pain and insisted they turn it back on, to which the nurse laughed and said they don't usually notice when I turn it off, and left it off despite my screams. Screaming to get through the pain of pushing, the nurse told me to stop, as it would not help, and to breathe through it instead. Screaming was the only thing that motivated me and helped me, yet I took her advice and had much less success in pushing. She then told me I needed to try harder because it wasn't getting the baby out fast enough. This was both disheartening and made my job more difficult. What occurred after this was nothing short of a nightmare. I continued to push until I had birthed my baby. I had second-degree tears and a few small ones as well as grazes. My husband overheard the nursing team saying that they were getting ready to do an episiotomy before I tore. They did not ask me if I consented to this, nor did they inform me or him that they were preparing to do this. Following this, he overheard the nurse telling another nurse that she got sidetracked for an hour when going to tell the anaesthetist that I wanted an epidural, and therefore that is why I did not get one. When my baby was placed on me, a nurse kept insisting that I feed my baby. When I asked for help, as I had never breastfed before, this being my first child, she responded with, "We cannot show you how to do that. You have to figure it out for yourself," and then kept insisting I feed him. When the surgeon came in and stitched me up, she informed me that I had tears that needed stitching and what they were. She also informed me that she was going to use numbing needles to numb the pain, and that I should have gas as well to help with it. When I sucked in the gas, it wasn't working, and I felt everything that was going on. I flinched and screamed. The surgeon then informed me that if I couldn't handle it, we would have to go under to be stitched up in surgery. This is when I started crying, and she told me that I shouldn't be feeling anything except tugging due to the gas. When she asked the nurse who was in charge of the gas what level it was on, she informed her that it was on the lowest setting. the same setting on the dial before birth. The surgeon apologised to me, and after that told the nurse to put it up higher, scolding her. After this, I could not feel anything unless I stopped sucking for a few seconds. Once this was all over, the surgeon said that she could prescribe me something for the pain, yet when I got to my room, all I was given was Panadol my entire stay. I was given a private room, the only positive thing about the entire experience. As we left the birthing suite, a nurse gathered a blanket for my husband, who was given the blanket I had birthed on, covered in blood. And this was his blanket for sleeping. A new nurse who was working in the area came in to help and found my husband a new blanket. She also proceeded to show me how to breastfeed. That's when the other nurse told her they aren't allowed to. So my camera just died, so I'm filming the rest on my phone, but long story short, a nurse came in and helped me breastfeed and got my husband a new blanket, and overall it was a pretty crap experience, but I got my son out of it, who is amazing, so that is the main thing. So that is all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.